It took a few days, but the election of 2020 is called for Joe Biden and the nation's first woman vice president, Kamala Harris. But the fight appears poised to go on, with allegations of impropriety from President Trump that stretch right into Detroit's downtown convention hall. Is the end in sight for an election that drew more American voters than any in history? Today is Sunday, November 8th, 2020, and this is Flashpoint.
Hi, welcome to Flashpoint on the Sunday after Election Day. And here we are with a declared winner and an incumbent who refuses to concede, something that many predicted might occur. As word came that Joe Biden had finally crossed the electoral threshold, celebrations broke out all over America, but not at the most American address of all, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. In fact, President Trump foreshadowed this outcome any number of times when he refused to say that he would go along with the results should he lose. We're going to get to the allegations of impropriety that have dominated the White House reaction since Wednesday, when it was hard to miss. The numbers moved in a different direction when the counting in many states moved from the polling place ballots to those that were cast by mail. But let us not lose the really extraordinary story of this election day. After years and years of many complaining of low voter turnout and engagement, the electoral cup runneth over. In Michigan, 5.5 million votes cast. Both Joe Biden and Donald Trump set vote records, and Kamala Harris broke through 3 or 4 ceilings herself. But that overwhelming voter participation led to a system that needed quite a bit of time to sort itself out in many states, especially in the places where the margins were thinnest, and a few votes here and there were the difference between getting an infusion of electoral votes or leaving the state empty-handed. The move of the numbers from Trump-heavy to Biden-heavy led to a very strange, many felt dangerous reaction from the president in the wee hours of election night. And it became clear the president felt aggrieved by the mail-in votes he had long claimed were faulty, if not downright fraudulent. And very quickly, Michigan, in fact, we saw stories circulating on social media of everything from software glitches to an order to backdate late arriving ballots. Is there any merit to the accusations that are keeping the president from conceding the race? This morning, Chris Thomas, the former state elections director who was brought in to help oversee the Detroit election effort, is here to answer the criticisms, some of which are being directed right at him by the Republican National Chairwoman, Ronna McDaniel. Chris Thomas is up first today on Flashpoint. And let's start with these allegations that are keeping the president from conceding the race. A number of them center on Michigan, a number of them made by the Republican National Chairwoman, Michigan native Ronna McDaniel, who included this allegation from what she says is a whistleblower who didn't like what she saw at TCF Center in downtown Detroit during the count.
On the morning of November 4th, whistleblower was instructed by their supervisor to take the ballots with no dates, enter them into the electronic record, and place either November 2nd or November 3rd as the date received.
Now, that supervisor she's talking about is the man who spent 35 years as Michigan's elections director, who was brought in to oversee Detroit's counting effort, and Chris Thomas is my guest this morning. Chris, really good to have you on the program. I really appreciate it. Let you start with that. She made a number of allegations the other day, but that one was central to you, and she says it came from an affidavit from a poll worker who was not a volunteer, but a contract worker, who says that she was being asked to backdate ballots.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you to answer some of the questions that you have concerning the conduct of the election last Tuesday and Wednesday. Regarding that allegation, to my mind, there is no validity whatsoever. What we do in elections in Michigan is we ensure that no voter is disenfranchised due to a clerical error. I am not sure who this employee is, and I was not supervising any employees. I was not at the center in a supervisory role. What occurred with a number of ballots is that voters went to a satellite site. They voted their absentee ballot, gave it back to the clerk, and the clerk, when they entered the last step, they entered the date of receipt, which that clerk had stamped onto the envelope. And then they were required to push a button which said save. And if that button's not pushed, then that voter's name does not end up on the poll list. So when the workers out at the tables tried to scan the barcode on the label of the envelope, the name did not pop up. So it was brought to a central area. They looked in the qualified voter file, which is the Secretary of State's statewide system,
Right.
and saw that in fact that it was an incompleted process. So we had the envelope, we had it date stamped, the date was entered into the system, and the save button was pushed. So it was not backdating. These were not ballots that were received after Election Day. Most of them were received on Monday, November 2nd, the day before the election.
We had a number of other issues that day. People were very upset that when all of a sudden there was paper being placed up and cardboard being placed up on some of the windows. And they felt that there was that was all designed to hide some sort of chicanery going on at TCF.
Well, that simply is not the case. So when that occurred, there were a massive number of challengers in the room for both the parties. And I would say the Republican Party at that point had more challengers in the room than they were entitled to. I understand that the windows, were blocked because the workers at the tables close to the windows were highly distracted by people out there banging on the windows, waiting for glass to shatter and photographing them. So it added a real discomfort level to the workers, and it was totally unnecessary.
Well, did papering over the windows, though, make that problem worse rather than better?
Well, it gave the workers the confidence they needed to move ahead with their work. There were challengers in the room. There were challengers over at those tables. It's not like there were no challengers present.
One of the
People
other
outside the room were misbehaving, banging on windows. For all we knew, that glass could have shattered.
One of the other allegations that you've heard is that those who were inside as they left weren't being allowed to be replaced. Those who, the observers or the challengers. I spoke to a woman this past week who called. She had gone through 2 days of training, went down there, hoped to be able to get inside, never got in, and she felt that she was seeing as people left, they weren't being replaced. And to her way of thinking, it seemed to be more Republicans that was happening with rather than Democrats.
Well, people have different sets of glasses on, so they were replacing people when they left. They would let another one in. They started having them sign out. And remember, this was at a point when at least one of the parties was well over their quota of one per table. So it's not as if there were not enough challengers in there to watch the process. And in fact, any of the confusion and chaos that people want to ascribe, I would ascribe to challengers. They did not put a person at each table. They all gathered in the main thoroughfares throughout the room, rather than being out at the tables where they belonged. It was difficult to walk through. It created quite a bit of difficulty in terms running the operation.
Chris, one of the reasons that you were brought in was because there were a lot of problems in the primary in Detroit. We found that 70%, more than 70% of those ballots would not have been recountable with the way that they were handled. If there is a recount ordered in Michigan, which is still up in the air, are you convinced that the Detroit vote is recountable this time?
Well, we're in the canvass process right now. That canvass process, the purpose of that is to, in fact, make sure that these are all balanced. So that's going to be an ongoing process that we're going to work on and make sure that all balancing, to the extent possible, is done. So at this point, I think that we ran a very good show and that we put a good number of ballots, probably close to 170,000 ballots through the process in a 2-day period. And so we will continue on with the canvass.
Chris, you've seen a lot in your many years of working for both Republican and Democratic administrations, Republican and Democratic secretaries of state. I know this has been a most unusual one in your 35 years. I so appreciate your time. Thanks very much for being here and talking about it with us this morning.
Thank you, too.
You bet. Chris Thomas, who helped oversee the counting effort in Detroit. Where do we go from here? Let's talk about that next as we continue on Flashpoint.
At Beaumont, we're always ready for change. So when COVID-19 changed the way our community needed us, we created change to serve them even better. Change that made safer return-to-work programs with on-site screenings possible. Change that let us pivot quickly and care for the most COVID-19 patients in all of Michigan. Because the one thing that will never change is our commitment to you.
A recent study revealed that a large percentage of Michigan homeowners are missing out on significant savings every month by not refinancing. Hi, I'm David Hall from Hall Financial, and at Hall Financial, we focus on putting you in the best financial position possible. So start saving today and call us at 248-308-5000, or you could chat with us online at davidhallmortgage.com. Lower payments, better options, more personal attention.
Visit GollingRoseville.com and lease or buy your next vehicle online. Only at Golling Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Roseville. During the Black Friday sales event, take advantage of employee pricing for everyone when you drive off in the 2020 Chrysler Pacifica Limited for as low as $369 a month employee. You search, you request, we deliver to your home or office. Shop GollingRoseville.com. Golling Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Roseville.
It's been an election to remember. Local 4 News Today has had the big interviews and complete election coverage.
Michigan is in the spotlight.
And the story continues to develop.
Former Vice President Joe Biden has been elected President of the United States. He is President-elect.
The results are just one story. We're committed to telling the hundreds of stories that come next.
When you wake up, Monday from 4:30 to 7 a.m. on Local 4 News Today.
All right, welcome back. So where now from here? Let's talk about this morning with Zoe Clark, Program Director for Michigan Public Radio. Chad, I'm kind of bouncing around here, but down in the lower right corner there, Chad Livengood, Senior Editor of Crain's Detroit Business. Above him, Dennis Cowan, attorney for Plunkett Cooney and the former mayor of Royal Oak. And there you see on the lower left-hand side, Portia Roberson, the head of Focus Hope. And Portia, I want to start with you. You and I were texting yesterday. It was an emotional day for a lot of people, but as Maya Rudolph said last night on Saturday Night Live in her role as Kamala Harris, she checked more boxes than a disqualified ballot. Tell me a little bit about what yesterday felt like for you as a woman of color.
You know, I think I have been surprised over and over again by how emotional I get by seeing myself reflected in the second highest position in the land. I mean, it really is monumental to see, to watch yesterday as she approached the podium and talked about her mother and how much her mother could not have imagined that this would one day be her moment. And I think everyone felt that. You know, and I think that watching all of them come on the stage yesterday, it just really, to me, felt like a reflection of America. It felt like what America hopes to be, in that there were all kinds of races and cultures, and we're bringing that full experience now to not only the White House, but also to the Naval Observatory, where the Vice President is going to reside. Yeah. So it was quite a day.
Zoe, it always feels kind of reductive to just talk about demographic happenings in elections. But, you know, when you look back at how long it took for a woman to find a place on a ticket, I'm going to assume it felt similarly to you yesterday, too.
Sure. And as, you know, a nonpartisan who gets to watch this both sort of from a journalistic point, but also as a historical point. I mean, you can't not feel emotional when you see little girls last night in Wilmington, Delaware, looking up at Vice President-elect Harris. And for me, I think it'd be the same whether it was, you know, a Republican, whether it was a Democrat, you know, a libertarian, haha. So, you know, that's going to be the history-making moment. But look, I mean, the fact is, whether or not you are voted for this ticket, history has been made this week.
Well, let's move into some of the murkier issues here that still await us then. Dennis, you've been a proud supporter of the president right through these past 4 years. But the remarks that he made on election night at about 2:30 in the morning were very troubling to a lot of people. It portends a fight that's still ahead. Do you think it's time for, the old saying back where I come from is if 10 people tell you you're drunk, it's time to lie down. Is it time for the president to lie down, or is there really a fight to be had here?
Well, Devin, first of all, I always celebrate first wherever they happen in political life. I haven't been a candidate myself. These are always tough elections.
Sure.
But the reality is, unfortunately, it's very predictable, Devin, that the national media and Washington Democrats have called for President Trump, the campaign, and their supporters to all lay down and play dead. Quite frankly, they sacrificed that high ground over the last 4 years with the constant drumbeat that this election in 2016 was illegitimate, and President Trump was illegitimate. So they can pause, celebrate for the time being. But yes, there will be challenges. The burden of proof will be on the Trump campaign. This is a process we've been through before. In 2000, the Republic survived. It thrived. It continued. So we will have continued some legal challenges, and those will have to play out. They're going to play out very quickly because the dates, which can't be changed by courts, in terms of board of canvassers and other those others who certify elections, will happen very quickly in November. And I think we're all headed towards the December 14th date when the electors make their decision in Washington, D.C.
This doesn't look to be in a number of these states, particularly in Michigan, but it doesn't look to be a particularly close election overall anymore, Dennis. People talk about how difficult it is to unseat an incumbent president. It is very difficult, and yet it looks like Joe Biden's margin of victory here nationally is going to be greater than Ronald Reagan's was over Jimmy Carter, which is so often pointed to as a landmark election. Is this election close enough to you then to be fighting this way?
Well, Devin, as in 2016, as we all remember, the razor-thin margins in several states provided Donald Trump with victory. I was looking this morning again at the votes. You really have less than 100,000 votes in several key battleground states that are making that decision. And with nearly 150 million people voting, I think we'd all have to agree that is a razor-thin margin. The Trump campaign has decided they are going to make challenges, and they have the burden of proof. Facts matter, and that's what will have to be before the court, and then that will play out in our court system and in our time-honored tradition of moving forward with an election. We also have votes are still being counted. We probably will have a recount in Georgia, perhaps a recount in Pennsylvania under their state laws. So I think we're just following through the process, and I don't think we're in any kind of crisis right now. We're just moving through the process, as both Democrats and Republicans had prepared for. I mean, both had, Joe Biden had an army of lawyers ready to go in every state.
Let me let Chad weigh in here if you would. Chad, when we see recounts, we typically see movement of votes in the hundreds, not in the thousands. But what are your thoughts about, is Dennis right? We're not really in a crisis yet.
We're not at a total crisis yet, but when you get margins of 150,000 here in Michigan, you're not going to change that. But some of these states that are in the 10,000, to 50,000 range, that might be. I mean, they have the right to ask for recount, and they can go forward with that. And John James in Michigan could still ask for recount, even though he's down by 60,000 votes. So the candidates have the right to do this. But is it worth the effort, or is it exactly going to be fruitful? That's questionable when you're talking about 60,000 votes and changing an election at this rate. And then there's still this issue of the electors. There is this doomsday scenario out there where, in Michigan at least, where Democratic attorneys are preparing for the potential for where the Republican legislature tries to appoint all Republican Trump electors and tries to, and it's very doomsday scenario, but it's out there, and there's still a lot of things that could happen between now and December 14th, when the electors formally elect the president.
Portia, you're an attorney. You've worked for the Department of Justice. I know you don't believe that because you don't want to steal the joy of the people who believe they've won the race is enough to stand down. Are you okay with the president taking every legal avenue that's available to him?
I think absolutely, because at the end of the day, when the transition actually happens, and it will happen on January 20th, whether we get a concession from Donald Trump or not, we need to move forward in this country. And so I'm not concerned with people exercising every right that they have to prove to themselves either that they won or that in this case that Donald Trump has lost. But yeah, no, I don't have a problem with it. I think what we've seen is some tactics that were used, particularly at TCF in the last week, that were unbecoming of every party. I think that there were a number of people who were down there making sure that every vote was counted. There were people who volunteered to count those votes. And I think, the disparaging comments from the current president about Detroit and about it being a corrupt city and the fact that we were delivering ballots and so on and so forth in the middle of the night were erroneous and crazy. But that's been sort of the tendency from this administration to make these wild accusations without any basis in fact. But if they feel that they need to do legal challenges in order to prove to themselves that they are no longer president of the United States, so be it.
Zoe, the cold water to throw on all of it. In fact, I said yesterday on Twitter, I felt like a killjoy for pointing this out, but it looked to me like we had all kinds of super spreader events occurring across the country yesterday, including, by the way, Dennis, what happened after the Notre Dame win over Clemson last night. But Zoe, the reality is that we have a massive problem developing, as many predicted it would, with coronavirus, which is a reality both on practical terms here in our state, where we're watching cases rise, but a massive challenge facing Joe Biden as he takes over the presidency.
And Gretchen Whitmer continuing. I mean, we've been talking about historic turnout here in Michigan and the country in terms of voting, but we also hit some really horrible records this week, which was countrywide and throughout the nation, and here in Michigan as well, which was some of the single highest days of cases. And we know that the state house appears to have been kept in Republican hands. So that means beginning in January as well, Michigan is going to look sort of similar in terms of government, with a Democratic governor who is pushing hard on some of these coronavirus measures, and a Republican legislature that seems to just not want to engage at this point in any new mandates. And so that is unfortunate and concerning, and something that we will continue to watch in the new year.
In fact, Dennis, I'm curious as to how you feel the president's supporters will react to a new set of marching orders when it comes to coronavirus, should they come from Joe Biden, say in the form of a national mask mandate. What do you see ahead, Dennis, in the fight against the virus?
Well, I don't see this just as a Trump supporter issue or a Biden supporter issue. This is Michiganders and Americans, I think, will initially react with some difficulty. I think we were, chatting about this before we came on, and everyone is very fatigued. Everyone wants to, get to the finish line on this. I think we need to hear, and some of the things that need to happen is we need to be told more about the safe and tested vaccine that is being developed, vaccines, so we can give people some hope. And I do strongly encourage the governor to please stop treating the Republican legislature like a leper colony and to work together. We have still not seen that, and it's very disconcerting. We're talking about unity. I agree with that. We're going to get past this as Americans, this election process, and we're going to move forward together, and I encourage that. But at the same time, during this process and during COVID, we need to work together, and that just simply is not happening from Governor Whitmer, and I'm very disappointed.
Chad, I've only got about 15 or 20 seconds left here, but why don't you address that, the schism between the governor and the legislature, which an election is not going to change?
Yeah, the legislature has not come to accept that the lockdown in the spring did bend the curve. The infection curve looked like this a month ago. Now it looks like this. It's completely a vertical ascent. We are at 6,200 cases yesterday. We had 29,000 cases in the last 7 days. It was more than we had in the entire month of September.
Yeah. It's a great way of putting it. Gang, thanks so much for the conversation. Really good to see you all, if only digitally. Thanks so much for your time, and have a great day and stay safe.
Thank you.
And we'll be back with more on Flashpoint right after this.
The good news is the flu shot is in plentiful supply this year. I wanted to be sure to get mine.
This year, more than ever, it's really important to get the flu vaccine. We definitely do not want to see a flu epidemic on top of a COVID pandemic.
It takes 2 weeks for the vaccine to be effective, so you'll want to get it before flu season starts in earnest.
CDC recommends everyone over the age of 6 months should get the flu vaccine.
Connect with your St. Joe's primary care physician and get your flu shot today.
If you have Original Medicare with the red, white, and blue card, you may be missing out on important savings and extra benefits. But with Priority Medicare Vital from Priority Health, you'll have a $0 medical deductible and a drug plan included, all for a $0 premium. Plus, you'll also have maximum out-of-pocket protection, unlike Original Medicare. That's something Carla experienced before she made the switch to Priority Medicare Vital.
I had Original Medicare with the red, white, and blue card. I thought I was okay until something unexpected happened and I had a huge series of bills. And I said, never again. I wish I would have had a Priority Health plan then, but thank goodness I do now.
Protect your hard-earned money. Call now. And if you are eligible for Medicare, we'll give you a $10 gift card just for calling to see how you can get more benefits with the Priority Medicare Vital Plan, with no obligation to enroll.
It's not just the trees that are changing. It's not just the leaves that are falling. The weather is changing too, and that's why the local forecasters have Storm Tracker 4. The latest technology making our forecasts faster and more precise than ever before. And nobody else in Detroit has it. Plus, our weather app puts those vital fall forecasts in the palm of your hand, wherever you are. For changing weather in changing times, count on the local forecasters.
And just like that, we are all out of time. Thanks so much for being with us today. Record high cases now in both Michigan and Ontario. Please stay safe. Meet the Press is next, and we'll see you next time.